If you think the coronavirus lockdowns, rules, and vaccine developments have been confusing, you can blame the federal government, namely the Department of Health and Human Services. And our vote this November is the best chance to replace the person in charge. This November 3rd, in the midst of a global pandemic, we'll be voting for the next president. But the election determines so much more than the occupant of the White House. There are more than 4,000 powerful government jobs, all appointed by the commander-in-chief. And when it comes to the coronavirus response, all roads lead to the Department of Health and Human Services and its secretary. With 80,000 employees and a budget around $1 trillion, HHS is a massive part of the federal government. It's made up of 11 agencies, including the Centers for Disease Control, the Food and Drug Administration, and the National Institutes of Health. You know Dr. Fauci? The head of the HHS is his boss's boss. As you can imagine, the HHS secretary's job description is extremely long, but for starters, the department provides health services like Medicare and Medicaid. In fact, the current HHS is the reason it's now harder for us to get birth control through Obamacare. They also regulate food and pharmaceuticals, and they head health responses to outbreaks and pandemics like Ebola, Zika, and now COVID-19 by formulating the testing strategy and overseeing vaccine trials. But extreme political divisiveness has caused massive distrust in the Health and Human Services agencies, which is flat out deadly in a global pandemic. I reached out to Abraar Karan, a public health expert, to talk about the department's response to COVID. How does the health secretary affect our daily lives during the coronavirus?
The secretary is overseeing a lot. These are the entities that are giving the guidance on what's safe, the risks that we take when we go out. What areas can we go to? What kind of venues can we go to and what not?
In your opinion, what are the most important qualities or criteria that you would look for in a health secretary during a pandemic?
Well, the most important is sticking to science, right? Making sure that the science and the data is what's guiding our public health response. There are always going to be political pressures when you are in a position that's as high as the Secretary of HHS that's appointed by the president. And so you're bound to be feeling these pressures. But the key here is to make sure that the president understands the science, because ultimately the science dictates what happens.
In the coming 4 years or even the coming months with the pandemic, what will be the most important tasks that the health secretary has to do?
So the most important part of the role of the Secretary of Health and Human Services coming forward is going to be operationalizing a response. So National Institutes of Health is running these big clinical trials, right, on vaccines, on therapeutics. You've got the FDA, which is approving different medications, different diagnostics. And you've got the CDC, which is actually doing the applied public health, right, the epidemiology, the actual state level response. It kind of falls back on the Secretary of Health and Human Services to really be the person leading all of these different agencies. It's a huge, huge responsibility. It's extremely complicated, but that's what we'll need.
Right now, the head of the HHS is Alex Azar, a former Big Pharma lobbyist who has blocked attempts to lower prescription drug prices and enabled anti-abortion policies. The list could go on, but since we're in the middle of a global pandemic, let's keep this to COVID. Azar's response to the pandemic has been sloppy to say the least. He reportedly waited weeks to debrief officials on the virus when it first hit, and then oversold the CDC's capacity to deliver tests. Hospitals and frontline doctors criticized the agency for not releasing funds quickly enough to those who needed it most. If I screwed up this badly at my own job, I would be fired by now. But at least compared to the health secretary, the stakes aren't nearly as high. Here's your daily reminder that the US has the highest COVID case and death rate in the world, and things don't seem to be improving. In the past few months, the Trump administration's HHS has made decisions that have caused major panic among public health experts, including manipulating scientific reports to fit Trump's narrative, releasing CDC testing guidelines that scientists objected to, and accusing the agency's staff of deep state ulterior motives. The administration's vaccine release schedule, which is suspiciously timed to the upcoming election, has also raised concerns that politics may be at play when it comes to the COVID response. Decisions involving vaccine trials and distribution will be among the most important public health issues that the health secretary will tackle in the coming months. Politicizing science and research during a pandemic puts our lives in grave danger. So if you're just not feeling either of the two presidential candidates, remember the next Health and Human Services Secretary will literally be making life and death decisions that affect us, our friends, and our families.